For this portion of the demonstration, I'm going to be making an example verification call for employment. And you'll notice on the other half of the screen, we've got our second page of our rental application up. And that's because it contains a signature or written authorization. And that's really the key element to especially employment verifications. They're going to need to see that in most cases before they release any information to you. As long as your disclosure says something to the effect of, I authorize the release of information and permission to perform a background check, credit check, something along those lines, and then has them sign it. Very, very rarely will we ever get an employer who says the disclosure is not good enough, or we require our own, or have the employee fill out this form and we'll send it to you. Most of the time, 99% of the time, a simple signature, a simple disclosure works. But again, very important for employers and certainly property management companies as well. Some of them have their own protocols or standards that they have, and they won't release any information as well unless they have that signed consent or written consent from the applicant. So in this case, for the employer, we're going to be, again, using Regan Smith as the applicant, and we're calling Bella Transport. And on the rental application, it typically asks for the supervisor's name. It depends on the size of the company. It depends on the type of company. Sometimes the supervisors won't give you any information, and they're going to direct you directly to HR. You need to be prepared as you're making these phone calls that not every employer is comfortable, or in a lot of cases, they have their own company policies about releasing certain types of information. What we found is that salary information is only released about 50% of the time. If that's the case, you're definitely going to want to have some other form of verification in place, maybe a pay stub, bank statements, a leave-in earnings statement, whatever you can to sort of match records. But again, from the thought that you want to do your due diligence and make sure you're crossing every single possibility off, you at least want to make that phone call, get somebody on the phone that can verify, yes, regging does work here. Even if they can't give you the salary information, it's still going to give you that peace of mind that they've been there, and you should at least be able to come away with some dates as well. So in this case, I'm going to, again, for the sake of demonstration, I'm jumping on a fake call here, but I really want you to see the tone, the tempo of the phone call. And this is going to be a very professional call, most likely, especially if you're getting in touch with an HR manager. This is something that they do pretty routinely on a daily basis. Hi, I'm calling to verify employment for a Regan Smith. They filled out a rental application, and I just needed to verify their employment with Bella Transport. Can I speak with Tony, the supervisor?
Got to call HR.
Okay, so I actually need to speak with HR in order to get any of the verification information? Perfect. In the case when you're making this introduction, what's different here is you also want to mention that they filled out an application for a rental. Another thing that we found in doing hundreds of these a day, sometimes employers put a little bit of a wall up if they think that the person filled out an application for another job, and you want to throw them off that trail immediately. You want to let them know this is not for another job. They're not leaving. They're not going to find a new place to work. This is simply because they filled out a rental application for an apartment, and you're verifying this just as a normal course of business. So I'm about to jump on the phone here with the HR department, and the first thing I want to make sure I'm getting is the name of the person that I'm speaking to. All right, and can I have your name, please?
This is Lucy.
All right, thank you. So I'm just calling to verify information for Regan Smith. He listed this as his current employer, and he filled out an application for an apartment. So we just wanted to make sure that this is, again, his current employee.
Yes, he works here.
And so is he full-time or part-time?
Oh, he's full-time.
He's a full-time employee. And do you have a hire date?
June 2016.
Okay, June 2016. And what's his position there?
Driver.
Okay, he's a driver. Thank you. All right. And what is his either hourly or annual salary? And you'll notice I asked specifically hourly or annually, and that's because sometimes if you ask for only one, that HR department may not have that number. They may not know what his hourly salary is. They may only know what his annual salary is, or vice versa. you don't want to just limit it to one or the other because it's too easy for them to say, I don't know, or I don't have that information. So you want to give them both options. That way, if they do one or the other, they're much more likely to give you one or the other. Okay. All right. So in order to release that information, you're going to need to see a copy of the rental application that's been signed giving authorization to release. Okay. And how do you prefer that information? I can either email it to you or fax it over to you.
Email.
Okay, you prefer email? Perfect. And what's the email address that I can send that to?
Lucy@bellatransport.com.
Okay, and do I need to send it attention to anybody specifically?
Lucy.
Okay, and I'm assuming you want a copy of the authorization page
Oh, yeah.
that's going to show that they've released the information. Perfect, okay. And do you require any other type of form that I need to send that you can just fill out, or do you have your own that you're going to be sending back?
We've got our own.
You have your own. Okay, perfect. So again, landlords or employers are pretty accustomed to handling these phone calls. A lot of times they have their own standard forms that they're going to shoot back over to you. So let them use what they're comfortable with using, but it never hurts to ask if they want to have it in a specific way. The last thing you want to do is delay this on some sort of technicality because maybe you only sent over the authorization page and they were expecting some sort of fill-in-the-blank form that lists your questions already. Either way, you just want to make sure that you get it out, and then you also want to make sure what the turnaround time is going to be. So I'm going to ask them directly, and when do you think that you'll be able to get that back to me? I'm doing this for two reasons. Number one, I want to make sure that they know that it's important and there's some sort of urgency to this. And then second, I want to make sure that they know I'm going to follow up on this. This is going to be something that maybe later in the day, maybe tomorrow, whatever they tell me. If they tell me we'll get it back to you tomorrow, then I'm probably going to calendar it up. In the case that if we're making these phone calls for Rent Prep, we're definitely calendaring it up and knowing when to make that follow-up phone call. And that follow-up phone call is going to go simply just like this. Hi, this is Steve. I'm just calling to follow up with you. I emailed you yesterday a release for a Regan Smith for an employment verification. I wanted to make sure that you received that. And if you did, I wanted to see if maybe we can just complete the verification over the phone rather than having to have you send something back to me.
The phone's fine.
Okay, you could do it over the phone. Perfect. And the only piece of information that I was missing was the salary information for Regan. So did you have that?
22 an hour.
Okay, and that's $22 per hour, and he typically works a 40-hour work week, right?
Yep.
Okay. Perfect. I appreciate the information. Thank you very much.
Bye, Steve.
Again, these are, especially when you're calling employers, these are very professional phone calls. These are calls that they're accustomed to receiving, especially if you're speaking with an HR department. They should be well prepared. They should have all the information in front of them. Likely they're going to be pulling up some sort of employee management system and have literally the answers to all your questions sitting in front of you. It's just a matter of, as per their company policy, what they're able to release and what they're not able to release to you. Hopefully this was helpful for you, just to kind of go through and see somebody go through some live or pseudo-live verification phone calls. On the screen, you're going to see an example of a report where Rent Prep actually fills in the notes and is trying to really candidly capture the conversation in note form for the landlord. So if you're a type of landlord that has phonophobia or you just hate making phone calls, we get it. That's why we do this. We do these hundreds of times a day. So we've got a lot of experience with it. But again, if you're the landlord that's going to do it yourself, just make sure that you're asking the right questions and make sure that you're asking some loaded questions in there as well.